This video is about solving equations with multiplication and division. You need to take notes just like you would in class. So on your piece of paper, title it with this title. And for each example, show the steps just like I am. First example is x divided by 3 equals -6. So I'm going to rewrite the problem so that I have plenty of room to work with it. And we need to look at inverse operations. The inverse operation of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So on both sides, I'm going to multiply by 3, multiply by 3. If you want, you can make this 3 over 1 since you are multiplying by a fraction. 3 times x divided by 3, that's our identity property, and this is going to simplify to be just x. The whole reason we want to multiply by 3 is to cancel out the divided by 3 so that we get the variable by itself. Then the other side of the equation, -16 times 3 is -18. With this, we can always go back and check our answer. So in the original equation right here, we're going to substitute -18. So check it step. -18 divided by 3 is -6, which is what we wanted it to be. So we know -18 is the correct answer. Second example is 18 equals -4y. Now when the variable and the coefficient are scrunched up next to each other, it means multiply. In your notes, I want you to identify the -4 is your coefficient. And the y, or whatever letter you're using, that is your variable. Okay, and that always means multiply if there's no symbol. Just like before, I'm going to start by rewriting the equation. The opposite of multiplying by -4 is dividing by -4. So both sides divide by -4, divide by -4. On the right side of the equation, -4 divided by -4 is 1. I'm drawing a rectangle around it so that it looks like a big 1. So on the right side, we get 1y or just y. You can write it either way. On the left side of the equation, we get -18/4, or -18 divided by 4. You can divide that out, you can simplify it, you can change it to a mixed number. If we do -18 divided by 4, 4 goes in 4 times, and there are 2 out of 4 left over. So we get the answer 4 2/4, which we could either write as 4 1/2 or 4.5. Either one is correct. Final step is to check our answer. So we're going to substitute it back in. 18 equals -4 times 4.5. And now that I'm looking at this, I did forget one thing, and that's the negative sign. Perfect reason to check your work, make sure you don't have any mistakes. 4.5 multiplied by 4, I'm going to get 20, 16, 17, 18. Bring my decimal over one spot, and that's exactly what I wanted. I have a negative multiplied by a negative, so my answer needs to be positive. Okay, so we get -4.5 equals y as our answer. Okay, next one, we have -4/5 x equals -8. Notice up here we are going to solve an equation using a reciprocal. I want you to get that word reciprocal in your notes, and all it means is that we are going to flip the fraction. So over here, really informal definition, flip the fraction. All right, now when I solve this, -4/5 x equals -8. We could just divide both sides by -4/5. Don't write this part down just yet, but I want you to watch. If we divide by -4/5 here, we're going to divide by negative 4/5 here. Now that's fine. You can do it that way. You're just going to end up with some pretty big fractions. So here's 1. So we get 1x equals. Now on the other side, we need to do negative 8 divided by negative 4/5. Okay, we know that when we're dividing by a fraction, we need to rewrite that as a multiplication problem, and we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 8 times negative 5/4. And then whatever I get for that part is the solution to the equation. Now, because we want to use the reciprocal, I'm going to go back to my starting equation and rewrite this another way. So I'm just starting over, solving it a second way. Okay, this time, instead of dividing by negative 4/5, I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 5/4. I'm just taking 4/5 and flipping it so that I have the reciprocal. I did negative 5/4 on the left side, so I'm going to do negative 5/4 on the right side. Okay, left side, negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 5 is 20. And 20/20ths is just 1. So everything that is over on the left side, that's going to simplify to be 1x, or just x. Okay, the other side of the equation, I still have 8 times negative 5/4. Now these are the steps I do want you to include in your notes. So if you didn't start writing this down, do that now. And then we're just going to multiply straight across. Negative 8 times negative 5 is 40. 1 times 4 is 4. And 40 divided by 4 is 10. So the solution I get is x equals 10. On an equation like this, it's especially important to go back and check your answer to make sure, just because there's so many different things going on. So I'm going to take my equation and just shrink it a little bit so I have room to check my answer. Okay, start with your equation, negative 4/5 x equals negative 8. In place of x, I'm going to substitute in what I think the answer should be, which is 10. Okay, negative 4 times 10 is negative 40. 5 times 1 is 5. And negative 40 divided by 5 is negative 8, which is exactly what I wanted it to be. Okay, so I know that x equals 10 is the correct answer on this. Okay, word problem example. In a school election, 3/4 of the students vote. So that means in any given group of students, 3 out of every 4 are going to participate. There are 1,464 ballots. Write and solve an equation to find the number of students. Now, this is a type of problem you've done before. However, the new part that we're really going to work on is the write and solve an equation part. Okay, we need to make sure we have an equation before we start working backwards to find out how many students vote. When we do this, we're going to start by defining our variable. So we can pick whatever variable we want. Why don't we pick s, just because we want s to represent the number of students. Okay, the way that you can tell what your variable should be is by finding the question. We're looking at the question, seeing what it's asking you to do, and whatever your question is, that's what your variable is going to represent. Okay, it says 3/4 of the students vote. Just as kind of a hint, most of the time when you see the word of, that's going to represent multiplication. Okay, so I'm going to do 3/4 of the number of students. So 3/4 times s, or 3/4 s. Okay, whatever we get for that has to equal the 1,464 ballots that we ended up with at the end of the election. Now it's a little bit similar to the last one. We're going to solve it using our reciprocal. The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. So on both sides, multiply by 4/3, multiply by 4/3. Okay, 4/3 times 3/4 is 12/12, which is just 1. So I'm going to get 1 times s, or just s. On the other side, I'm going to multiply this out. 1,464 multiplied by 4, I can put that over 1, is 5,856. 1 times 3 is 3. Then when I divide that, I'm going to get a final answer of 1,952. Let's make sure that makes sense. We know our number should be bigger than 1,464 because that number didn't represent all of the students, it just represented a part of them. So our final answer, we get S equals 1,952. We had a word problem, so we need a word answer or units. So we're going to put students with that number.